an event to empower you when it comes to cancer and how to protect yourself is headed to the CSRA. So joining me today is Reverend Christopher Leslie. Thank you for joining me today, my friend.
Thank you, Sean, for having me.
No problem. I'll start to call you Dr. Reverend.
I'll receive it.
There you go. All right. So let's get right to it. November 18th, 3 p.m. over at Diamond Lakes Community Center, and it's Power Over Cancer.
Yes. We are having a Power Over Cancer Summit, which is an event that came into fruition as a result of the high incidence of prostate cancer in our area. I don't know if you know it, but there was an epidemiologist at Augusta University by the name of Xavier Moore. And he did research on incidence of cancer from 1999, I believe, up to 2012. And what he found out, there were hot spots in different parts of the country for certain types of cancer. Here in the Augusta, Richmond County area, Burke County area, is a high incidence for prostate and colorectal cancer. And so if we know that 1 out of 9 men are going to develop prostate cancer, 1 out of 7 men, African American, will develop prostate cancer, the question is, nobody's sounding the alarm. And so what we want to do is to bring awareness of the high incidence and the high probability of developing cancer so that people can get early detection so that they can survive.
Yeah, and Reverend, you have a personal connection with this, don't you?
Yes, actually I do. Well, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer myself in March this year. And Sean, I cannot tell you what it really feels like for someone to look you in the eye and say, you have cancer.
My goodness.
Brother, I listened to my doctor, and the only way I could describe it is it sounded like I was underwater. I knew he was talking to me, but it just wasn't processing. And the only thing I could hear was that I was going to die. And immediately, the only thing I could think about was my wife and my kids. And it terrified me. But God in his providential wisdom, man, I found out I had cancer on a Monday, but I already had a revival to preach on a Wednesday. And
did you go?
Yes, I had to go preach. And, you know, the sermon that I preached that night, the sermon title was I Choose to Believe. And when I got ready to preach the sermon, God convicted me. He said, you can't preach this if you can't walk it. So I choose to believe that God had a purpose even in my diagnosis. And so at that moment, there was a shift. And I decided to be what I did not see when I was diagnosed. I decided to be a man who is willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I have prostate cancer. And to encourage other men to be tested so that they can develop this idea that we can survive. Because I believe my healing was secured on the cross called Calvary 2023 years ago. And so at this point, I'm just waiting for my body to catch up with what I've already received in the spirit.
So did you always think you would be an advocate when it comes to this?
Well, you know, the strange thing about advocacy, I received this as a calling. It's not anything I would have volunteered for. But I know that if God allowed this to happen, there had to be a greater purpose bigger than me. And so my advocacy, again, this just happened in March. And now we're having this event in November. So I kind of feel like Abraham. You know, God told Abraham to leave everything that he was familiar with and go to a place that God was going to show him. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm leaving the area that I'm familiar with, but yet and still I'm walking by faith to where God is showing me. And this is the result, this Power Over Cancer Summit.
Nice. I love it. So if folks want to come out to the summit, is it free?
Yes, it is a free event. We thank God for our wonderful Commissioner, Alvin Mason. We thank God for others in the community who have reached out and helped, some members of the Divine Nine, Pruitt Healthcare, let's see
and
here.
Dr. Nettles will be there as well.
Yeah, Dr. Darrell Nettles is with the Georgia Cancer Center.
Yes, sir.
And the wonderful thing about this is that Dr. Nettles was planning an event like this, but it never did come into fruition because it wasn't time. And I called him up.
Timing is everything.
Yes, God's divine timing is everything. And when I contacted him, he had already been planning something. So we collaborated together.
Nice.
And things just came together. And one thing I do know, if it's God's will, it's his bill, he'll make it happen.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. After this event, what's next for y'all?
Well, what we're planning to do, one of the things that I've started a charity called #Men Need to Talk. And if you go on Facebook and search #Men Need to Talk, you'll see videos of me chronicling my journey. But one of the things that we want to do is we're starting a charity specifically to help men to be diagnosed with prostate cancer. We pay health insurance for access to health care.
Absolutely.
But the fact is, when you need to have a diagnostic procedure done, healthcare service providers want you to pay the copays up front before you have your services done.
That's true. And sometimes you just don't have the copay.
If you don't have the copay, you don't have access to healthcare.
Right.
So what God did is he laid a vision in my mind. And what he showed me was 1,000 people giving just $100. And when that happens, what we plan to do is, starting in February of next year, offering many grants to help people with their copays to the service provider on behalf of the individual. So if a person needs to pay $1,200 in copays and they get a $500 grant, that's a $700 that they need to come up with.
Yeah.
Because if, in terms of indigent care, almost every service provider has indigent care. People with money can write a check, but what about that person in the middle?
Right. Yeah.
So that is the person that God laid on my heart, and that's the person we're going to work towards with our grants with #Men Need to Care.
And I hope when all this is squared away, you'll come back and share the great news with
Brother,
us.
I'll be glad to celebrate with you.
All right. Reverend, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the time.
God bless you.
Bless you, brother.
And we'll be right back.